2, 3.
I'm not a morning person at the best of times, but being woken up at 10 p.m. in minus 20 degrees was disorientating, to say the least.
When it came to putting my boots back on, it wasn't just hard because of all the layers I had on, but also the fact that I'd already lost 2 toenails and I'd had many blisters.
At 11 p.m, we set off in total darkness. At this point, our team was split into 2 so that the guides could monitor our physical condition more closely. So as nervous as we were, we knew that we were in really good hands.
We started the summit, we're high-fiving, we're singing our chant.
Less than an hour into our summit hike, I had noticed that my water bladder in my backpack had started leaking. And I'd only realised once it had frozen to the back of my insulated jacket. And I was terrified at this point that I would get hypothermia before I could even make it halfway up.
And then it got really serious when we started hearing sobbing, we could hear crying.
It was so dark that it was only when we got up close enough to the climbers that were distressed on the mountain that we could see them with our head torches. And at that point, we'd realised they'd already succumbed to their AMS and they wouldn't be making their summit challenge.
The demeanour of the guides really changed. The song stopped, the chanting stopped, and actually it was, right, we mean business now. Let's go. So the rules were we weren't allowed to stop more than 5 minutes every hour, just because it's so cold and you would freeze over.
Even without the ice down my back, it was freezing, and I just started begging for the sunrise. With every single step, our breath got more and more laboured, and you could tell that it was going to be really hard to get to the top.
We ended up stopping for nearly 12 minutes, and to say that that was cold was an understatement, and it did impact us for the rest of the walk.
I realised that I hadn't actually spoken a word to anyone in 3 hours, and I was becoming ever so slightly delirious.
At one point when we were walking, it genuinely felt like we were never going to reach the top.
At just after 5,000 metres, the sun finally started to rise, and there was just a tiny band of light on the horizon. And that kept us going up until Stella Point, where Jas started to cry uncontrollably.
I think I was just so emotional because everything that we'd building up to for years was for this point. Like, we were so close to the summit, and the last few hours was just so hard. And it was called Stella Point. We'd lost a dog in the family called Stella, so I made like a little paw print out of rocks, and it was just so emotional. I'm an emotional person anyway, but that just tipped me over the edge.
Candyman, Charlie. Candyman, Charlie. You might die, Charlie.
After a really quick break at Stella Point, and after a few tears had been shed, we only had around about 100 metres to go till the actual summit.
Uhuru Peak is waiting for us.
Yes.
Right there, and the sunrise behind us.
And whilst we were walking past the glaciers to the left and the craters to the right, I thought I was hallucinating as I heard someone playing an acoustic guitar next to me, turned around, saw a guy with an acoustic guitar, and wondered if I was absolutely miraging the whole thing.
And then we just started speed walking almost because we could see it. And then when we got there, we all just grabbed hold of each other, and I grabbed Savannah, who isn't really a hugger, and we had the longest hug, and we were both crying our eyes out, and everyone there was just full of joy. We all danced, we all sang. We physically could not believe that we were there. We were waiting to do this for over a year when it was booked. We trained for it, we'd hiked for 5 days to get to this peak, and we had 20 minutes.
After we'd hugged and cried and taken all of our summit photos, I took myself off to look at the glaciers, and I just started thinking about my dad and how he would have loved to have been there. It was a bittersweet moment knowing that he'd be so happy I was there, but I wished he was with me.
As well as celebrating the triumph of getting to the summit with Savannah and the wider group, I really wanted to share it with some other family and friends as well, so I left them voice notes with me crying, telling them how much I loved them.
Hey, I know you're not going to get this until I get Wi-Fi, but I just thought I'd let you know that I'm at the top. Today's been really hard, but it's so good. It's so beautiful. The team is so amazing. I did it. I love you.
Despite how hard the summit night was, there wasn't a moment where I thought we couldn't make it.
We then received the nod from our mountain guide that it was time to descend, which we were really gutted about. And then as we started going and regrouping, we noticed that there was a lot of commotion with the radios, and it was all in Swahili, so we couldn't understand any of it, and we just assumed it was because it was summit night. There was teams coming up left, right and centre. Didn't really think anything of it.
As we were making our way back down to base camp, we'd heard that a couple of our team members actually hadn't made it to the summit, as we were split into 2 groups. But I know that they would have been proud of how far they'd got, just as we are.
And within 2 hours of leaving the summit, we were already back at base camp.
It was so hard to compartmentalise the last 20 minutes we'd had at the summit, as it was hours ago and it seemed like it had only just happened. When we finally made it back to base camp, there was a whole team of people waiting to celebrate with us, from the porters to the other members of the team that had already summited. And it was just this huge celebration, and we could only just start to process of what we'd been through before we needed to set off for the next camp. After an already 10-hour day, we had another 4 hours to hike before we got to Millennial Camp. But when we got there, we heard rumours that a young guy had passed away on his summit hike that morning.
Obviously, we were all completely blindsided by this news, and it was really harrowing because we were almost so arrogant with the fact that we would get to the top that people literally died doing this.
He had succumbed to altitude sickness, and it hit home at just how dangerous it can be climbing at high altitude. And then I flashed back to the naivety of us thinking that it was going to be so easy.
The porters and mountain guides were just absolutely fantastic because they brought all of our mood back up because it was quite a solemn time.
We knew how lucky we were to make it back down to base camp safely, but at the same time we know how rare it is for a death on Kilimanjaro like this, making it all the more tragic. As we reluctantly left our last campsite of the whole trip, there was still some excitement to come, as this is the first time we'd be in the African rainforest.
Where there was just so much vegetation, so much noise, so much rainforest, literally like we'd been brought back down to earth.
At this point, the most significant change in anyone was the fact that we could breathe so much easier, and you could tell that from everyone's oxygen levels.
Before we set off on our final stretch, all of our porters and mountain guides were signalling for us to go over, and they sang us this most amazing song. They got us up, they danced with us, and it was just the most amazing send-off from everybody. And just for a bit of context, like, there was 9 of us in a team and there was 38 of them. It just goes to show the size of the team that we had, and every single one of them was just absolutely amazing, and it was the send-off of dreams. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
After the drive through the national park back to the hotel, our guides and porters were waiting for us for a surprise medal ceremony that we definitely weren't expecting.
And we had no idea that we were going to have champagne, food, beers, water, all waiting for us when we got there, and it just completely blew us all away. There was an opportunity to donate your gear. So when we got back to the hotel, Sav and I, we looked through all of our stuff and pretty much donated all of our hiking gear.
And we gave every bit of cash that we had left for their tips.
No matter how much we gave, it was never going to be enough. They had given us this incredible experience that we will remember for the rest of our lives.
And then after a very emotional goodbye with our guides, there was one last thing left to do, which was take the first shower in 7 days.
And my shower broke.
Once we're all cleaned up and we made our phone calls back home to let the family know we're okay, we headed off to the hotel restaurant to meet the rest of the crew.
And it was so weird, and we could barely recognise them because we hadn't actually seen them in normal clothes since we met them.
We'd made such incredible bonds with strangers that we'd only known for a few days, and I think it would have been impossible not to, given what we'd all been through.
We made lifelong friends with this group, and it was really hard to say goodbye, and we couldn't even stay and have a drink with them because me and Sav had to shoot off for another flight in 5 hours.
The journey to the airport really gave us some time to reflect and really process what had happened over the last week.
Being on this trip was the longest period of time that I've been disconnected from the outside world.
Nothing unimportant exists on Kilimanjaro. There's no work, there's no phones, there's no news or social media. And I think I'll be chasing that feeling of peace for the rest of my life.
If there's anything that I'm taking away from this, it's very much that you have to practice gratitude, because this trip has taught us literally that you can be on the top of the world 1 minute and it could all be taken away from you the next.
Silele mama, haitaji kupembelezana.
Changanyie machungwa, machenza na malimao.
Changanyie machenza, machenza na malimao. Mimi sio fala pukudu na liacha. Naumia, 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 naumia.
Silele mama,
Silele mama, haitaji kupembelezana.
silele mama,
Silele mama, haitaji kupembelezana. Changanyie machungwa, machenza na malimao. Mimi sio bora pukudu na liacha. Naumia, 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 naumia. Kata, 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 hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna matata,
Uhuru usiseme,
hakuna matata,
sema jambo,
jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni, wageni, wakaribishwa wapi? Kilimanjaro, hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna matata, hakuna